Welcome to another very fast, quick and dirty tutorial. Today with a topic again, which I wanted to know. I had this question and I didn't find a proper tutorial or answer on YouTube. So I just made my own tests and here are my results. The question was, what is the real difference between the auto-ducking feature and the sidechain method to make your music ducking under your voice? So I have run the tests and of course I already know the results, and I decided to make this audio including the results and using it at the same time with the different methods to show the results what I'm talking about at the same time. I think this is a cool idea. Okay. So, and by the way, this is not a tutorial how to do these methods, how to set these up. There are lots of tutorials in YouTube, and if you want, I can make my own version. This is just about the differences between these two methods. And because music is a little bit varying and distracting, I decided to use instead a very monotone sound that you clearly can hear the difference between the two methods. Okay, let's start with the easy one, which is the auto-ducking feature. The auto-ducking feature works like this. It checks with the parameters you put in. Shall I duck or shall I not duck? And if it ducks, it always ducks at the same amount which you put in, right? That means it totally doesn't care how loud your voiceover is. As soon as the loudness of your voiceover is beyond the threshold you put in with the sliders, the ducking takes place and the music is reduced to always the same amount, okay? So it doesn't matter whether you are very loud speaking or only middle loud or maybe even quiet. As soon as the ducking slider recognizes your voice as voice and not just as a background noise to not duck, then the ducking takes place. And you can see here, I can speak now very loud, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I can speak very quiet like this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you see the ducking is always the same amount. You see this graph goes down, it stays down the whole time and it goes up after it, okay? So the bottleneck are basically the quiet speaking parts, because when you talk quiet, you want that this is A, recognized as voice and not as background noise. B, you want that the ducking strength, the reducing of the music amplitude is enough that you still hear the quiet voices, right? That means, because the settings are for the whole audio the same, means that if you speak very loud, the strong ducking is relatively strong. That means you can hardly hear the music anymore if you have strong varying voice amplitudes, okay? So this is actually in general a good idea to compress your voice first, that this is more consistent. But this is not the topic of this video. So this is basically the most important property of the auto-ducking. If it's ducking, it's always ducking at the same amount, okay? Good. Let's come to the other method with the sidechain. The sidechain works with a compressor, and in that compressor you put in fixed values, but the compressor reacts way more flexible to your voice than the auto-ducking feature. What does this mean? Depending on the settings you put in the compressor, you can decide how fast the compressor shall react. For example, if you want, you can put in 1 millisecond, and that means that the compressor measures every millisecond the actual loudness level of your voice, and then the compressor knows how loud can the compressor let the music play in this millisecond before the whole audio together clips. Imagine it like this: the compressor measures as fast as you want, as often as you want, as short intervals as you like, measures the actual loudness of your voice and fills the rest with the music. So you always have a constant overall loudness level with the voiceover and the music together, which may sound good, but this has a clear disadvantage. Because if you see like here, now I make a very loud voice recording, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And because this was very loud, the compressor knows he has no much headroom left for the music, which means the music is compressed very strongly and ducked very intensely under the music. Basically, it's not very loud. If the voiceover is quiet like this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you hear that the music was much louder because the compressor saw I have much more headroom left, so I can make the music more louder. But this is like counterproductive in this moment, because if you're talking very quietly, you basically want the music be even more quiet, that you can still hear the voice. So this is the big disadvantage of sidechaining. The advantage is that it's super flexible, okay? The music is always varying in the loudness level while ducking. I mean, this is more like a matter of taste, whether you want this or not. But the disadvantage is that it makes actually the opposite of what you want, okay? If you're speaking very quietly, it makes the music louder. To make that effect really clear, I have another example. In the voice track, I have a permanent tone who starts very quiet and gets very loud, okay? And the good thing is, I don't even have to activate it. I can mute the tone that you do not hear it. Now you hear it. Now you don't, okay? So I can mute this, that you only hear the effect on the music track. And this is the reason why I was choosing this very monotoned sound, that you clearly can hear the differences in the amplitude and the loudness of the noise, and that you all get not distracted by any beats or whatever. If I play this now, you hear that while the voice track is getting louder and louder, the music track is getting quieter and quieter. So this was the proof that the music is like always the difference to the full volume level, okay? The louder the voice, the less music you can put on top or under it. And the quieter the voice is, the more music you can put under it, which is not good because then you cannot hear the voice anymore. And of course, the settings of your compressor make a little difference, but the basic working principle stays the same. If you compare this now with the ducking method, you see the ducking level is always constant, okay? As soon as the ducking kicks in, means it recognizes a volume level, which I was controlling with all these 3 faders. As soon as the voice is recognized, the ducking starts. As the ducking kicks in, means it recognizes a volume level. As the ducking kicks in, means it recognizes a volume level, which I was controlling with all these 3 faders. As soon as the voice is recognized, the ducking starts and it stays at the same amount the whole time, no matter how loud the voice is. What is the downside of the auto-ducking feature? basically you are always working with a compromise because of the fixed settings. It may sound a little bit strange on different voice levels. For example, if you take a very quiet audio part like this one as a reference point for auto-ducking, you hear the music is very quiet, that you still can hear my quiet voice. If I speak very loud like this, you can hardly hear the music, right? Because it's very quiet. But if you do the other way around and you use a very loud part as a reference point for the ducking decibel number, the music might be too loud in quiet voiceover parts like now. So I repeat it because you may haven't heard it. The ducked music might be too loud in quieter voice parts. So this was the basic difference between these two methods, and both have their advantages and disadvantages. In both cases, you should do the setup properly. So when you set up your compressor or your ducking, you should take a reference audio, which is like the most quiet audio you may have to recognize. And then you can make sure that either the ducking or the compressor takes care that the music is not too loud over the quiet voiceover parts. And if you have set up your method right, then it basically boils down to a matter of taste, what you like more. With a very long reaction time, in the auto-ducking method, you can get really smooth transitions, but in general, the auto-ducking feature sounds a little more abrupt because there is this threshold, and as soon as this threshold is reached or surpassed, the ducking kicks in with the full amount. And the higher the ducking decibel number you put in, the stronger you hear this effect. Some people say you have this pumping effect, which not everybody likes. Especially the shorter your reaction time is, the more often the ducking is interrupted and the more explosive these volume changes of the music appear. The music ducking with the sidechain method sounds a little bit softer, a little bit smoother, because the volume changes of the music are variable, and if you want that, you can adapt the music on each single peak and valley of the waveform of the voiceover. For example, if you have the end of a word or a sentence where it gets quieter, the compressor, like in real time, rises the music while the word or the sentence gets quieter. And of course, with the auto-ducking feature, you can reach a similar effect by controlling the sliders, but the volume change of the music is always fixed and not adjusted on the volume level of the voiceover. But to be honest, practically you can hardly hear a difference in the daily use. This video here was more about the nerdy fact if you really want to know the technical difference of these two methods. If you know how to use them, and if you learn one method properly, you really know what you're doing, you can achieve very good results with both methods. And I really encourage you to try both methods because the auto-ducking seems more easy to learn and more easy to use, but it's easy because you don't have much options, so it's actually very limiting. For example, if you take the reaction time controls A, how fast the ducking shall be ended, for example at the end of a word, B, how fast the ducking shall start before the next word, and C, it controls the steepness of the transition, all with a one slider. And this is not good because maybe you want the ducking to be ended not super fast after a word, but you want that it kicks in very short before the next word. So actually you need two different values, and you don't have it because you only have one slider. So this is the first compromise you have to make, and at the same time this was the decision of the transition speed, how fast the music should rise. I mean, this is not really flexible in my opinion. Okay. Of course, this super crazy compressor thing and the sidechain method, this could be overwhelming, and you can decide whether you have looked into it. To be honest, I also haven't tried everything in this compressor thing. I mean, just have a look at the compressor, only at the graphs, okay? You see how many different curves you can draw. What does this mean? This means basically you can give the compressor a rule set, how strong shall be the compression of the music per which decibel level of the voiceover, which means how strong the reduction of the music shall be per volume level of the voiceover. Or in very easy words, if the voiceover has a volume level of A, reduce the music with an amount of B. And this for as many different volume levels as you like. And while I'm saying this, it should be possible to create a rule for exactly what I want, which means if your voice is louder, the ducking of the music should be weaker. That means that the music is also louder. And if you have very quiet parts in your voiceover, the ducking should be stronger. That means the music should also be quieter. So if there is any person on the planet out there who can draw me this curve in a compressor, please write me. I mean, I don't really need it, but it would just be super interesting to run a test, whether it could really work. I mean, So I think you can sum up the whole comparison into one sentence. In the auto-ducking feature, you set one single rule. When shall the auto-ducking kick in? With which fixed amount? And in the sidechain method, you can set up a whole rule set. Not only when shall the compressor kick in, but also how strong at which voice level or whatever you want to duck. So if you really want to use the full potential of the sidechain method, you should really understand deeply how a compressor works, not only the basics, but I guess if you understand this, you are not watching this tutorial. Okay. So I guess if you take into consideration the amount of time you have to invest to understand the subject, I think the auto-ducking method is quite good for the results you get and for the usability. So it's all your decision which version you prefer. Wow, okay, so this tutorial actually got way longer than expected, but it is actually a relatively complex story if you dig really deep into it. And so if I couldn't manage it to give the answer in 15 minutes, then give it a thumbs down. But if you say, yeah, well, it took long, but you at least answered the question, and if you think this might be helpful for other people who want to get the answer of the same question, and if you want to help my channel, I would really appreciate it, then give it a thumbs up. And thank you very much for watching and staying so long here with me. Until the next time, bye bye. Wow, wow, wow. You are still here. This is so cool because that you're still here, that means you have found my Easter egg. Actually, I haven't planned this because while I was cutting the video, I figured out a new information. And this is your present because you are still here. Okay. I had the idea to put some music behind the tutorial after the tests were over, and there I had a song which was quiet in the beginning and it got louder, and I didn't even started the ducking while I just saw the waveform. I thought like, oh wait, what? Oh. If the song is quiet in the beginning and it gets louder, I instinctively knew what happens with the auto-ducking method and with the other method, and guess what? I tested it and it worked exactly how I was imagining it. Okay. By the way, you can pause the video now and you can think on your own. What might be the difference in this case? Okay, here's the answer. So we had the example that the voice has different loudness levels. This was the example with the permanent tone, which were super quiet and got louder and louder. And normally a song has like a permanent level, okay? Now we test the opposite, okay? We have a permanent voice, which is my voice, and we simulate the behavior of the two methods, but with super varying different volume levels of the music. Therefore, you see I took the same permanent tone, so I have created a new test audio, and this clip simulates a music with quiet parts and with loud parts. So in the beginning it's quiet and then it gets louder, and that you clearly hear the difference, I just make an abrupt transition, okay? So here's a short demo of this clip, how it works. There you see a quiet part and a loud part. Okay, let's start with the auto-ducking feature. You already know that the music clip during the ducking process always gets reduced by the same decibel number. And guess what? The auto-ducking totally doesn't look at the content of the music clip. It just ducks it no matter what is the content. If it's empty and quiet or super loud or whatever, it always uses the same reduction of the volume. And as you can see here, the whole clip gets reduced with the same decibel number, which means that the quiet parts of the song, which are right now, you can hardly hear them, and the louder parts, which come now, are much clearer noticeable, right? If you like that behavior, good. But if you think, well, no, that's not good, because I have lots of music with different loudness levels, but I want to make sure that I can always hear a little bit of the music while it's ducked, you should try the sidechain method. Because the same effect we already figured out, that the quieter the voiceover, the more headroom is left to make the music louder, also works in the opposite case. The quieter the music, the more headroom is there to increase the volume. And this is super ingenious because the quieter parts of the music gets amplified more than the louder parts. Because, as we already learned today, the compressor always reacts in real time and calculates the actual voice level, which in this example always stays the same, and looks at the actual music level and then calculates how strong or how weak must the music be ducked to achieve an overall volume of voice and music together, which you control with all the settings in the compressor. So now listen to the test and watch the magic happen. So the beginning of the test song is relatively quiet, but you can hear it relatively good because the compressor uses a lower ratio, which means the quiet parts are ducked not so heavily. And here, when the transition comes to the louder part, of course you hear a difference, but in the original song without ducking, the difference is much stronger. That means the compressor uses a higher ratio in the loud parts of the song to reduce the volume relatively more. And this is basically a very good summary to compare these two methods. The auto-ducking uses an absolute value and it reduces the quiet parts at the same absolute amount like the louder parts of the music, which means you keep 100% of the dynamic range of the song, which means the relation from the quiet parts to the loud parts stays exactly the same. The sidechain method with a compressor reduces the volume of the song relatively according to the voice track and according to the music track itself. So the compressor is like relatively clever, you know. It looks at everything at the voice level at this particular moment and at the music level in the same moment in real time, and adjusts the compression, which means the ducking of the music accordingly, which is actually ingenious if you want that effect, okay? Because that means that you lose dynamic range of the song, which means the relationship between the quiet parts and the louder parts stay not the same. So you can decide whether this is important for you for the background music. Because, as I said, this is all a matter of taste. Some people say, if a song has quiet parts, I also want them quiet in my voiceover. And if you cannot hear them then anymore, then it's okay, because it's intended how the song was composed. But if you say, well, no, it's not really important for me, I just always want to have a constant music bed under my voice, then the sidechain method is your way to go. I mean, it's just so good for that case, okay? And it's so cool when you make these tests with how much you learn. This is okay. So again, thanks for watching. It's really over now. Good night or good day or whatever. Bye bye.